You thought you'd gotten rid of us, didn't you? But you were wrong, old bean.
She was mine, she looked so good. I wanna hold her tight. Get teenage kicks right through the night.
Punk rock, that was something that was probably always coming along in the background. And then when we started the Vibrators, I've been playing in lots of other little bands and stuff. And I thought I was just another little band, but I think it's because we had different people in the band who had different likes in music that it became quite a sort of, not exactly clever, but quite inventive band. And we were playing away. We started in March, the first gig was in March, supporting the Stranglers in 1976. And we were just playing, and we were starting to play faster and faster. We're always fairly kind of on it, and that seemed to picked up an audience. And then the next thing, the press had this term, punk rock, umbrella thing, and there we were. We were included in that, and we were pretty early on. I mean, the Clash didn't start for another 6 months after we started, and stuff like that. And it was sort of very exciting, really, because suddenly there's all this stuff happening all around you.
First introduction to punk was back in about 1977 with the Sex Pistols. At the time I was living in Canada, so a lot of the music press that comes out of America was highlighting this new band from the UK called the Sex Pistols, and like how outrageous they were banned everywhere and this and that. I actually didn't really hear the album until about a year later, when my brother brought the album over from the UK, and it struck me that all the energy, and never mind the bollocks by the Sex Pistols, how good it was and everything like that. So I quite enjoyed it. As far as seeing any bands, punk bands live, it wasn't until a few years later, in the actually early 80s, when I saw the likes of The Damned, Public Image, and the Ramones, things like that. That would have been like the first time I ever saw them. So I perhaps didn't see everybody at the height of like the mid-70s. And I'm not one of those persons who can say they were at the 100 Club seeing the Sex Pistols. But still, I think it was a good introduction, as some of these bands are still going now, but they're obviously a lot older.
I was a kid when punk first came out, so I mean, like 77, I was 10. But I was a young little teddy boy. I loved Elvis and rock and roll, and I was getting into all that stuff. So most of my mates at that time, were a little bit older, and they were all into punk and carried on through the next few years. But I always kind of liked it. I always thought it had much more in common with rock and roll than was against it. But at the time, they were dodgy days to be a young little teddy boy with gangs of punks picking on you and stuff. But there was lots of. I mean, I remember I've still got newspapers probably at home from all the fights on the King's Road with the Teddy Boys fighting the punks and punks fighting the Teddy Boys and stuff. And so yeah, I do remember those days. But I thought punk had much more in common with rock and roll. It kind of shook up the music system at the time when same as when rock and roll came along and the music was so bland, and it was the same thing with punk. Punk took over from the sort of bland music that had come before.
One of my friends had a theory that the press invented punk rock to get rid of prog rock, and rather sadly, I think there were quite a lot of good other bands out there, but when punk came along, it got such a lot of attention that they sort of gave up.
Are punk rockers the new craze, they tell me. They're heroes, not the nice clean Rolling Stones.
In the Bill Grundy show, I remember seeing that when it was on. Yeah, that was. Even now when I watch it, I think it's not that shocking. At the time, that was pretty shocking. Yeah, it was amazing.
Wonderful people.
Are they?
Oh yes, they really turn us on.
What do they do?
Well, suppose they turn other people on.
That's just their tough tricks.
It's what?
Nothing. A rude word. Next question.
No. What was the rude word?
Shit.
Was it really? Good heavens.
I thought one of mine was in there, I'd go and drag them out. Terrible, I think it is. I think it's disgusting. It's lowering the standard of our people.
I am an antichrist. I am an anarchist.
God save the Queen, my son.